First of all, I want to get the good things out of the way first about Ran Carthon before I delve into madness, because I don't oftentimes on shows like this, on days like this, you dive into all the things that were the primary mood of the day, and today's mood was very bad and dysfunctional. I don't want some of the good things that I think and some of the good things that Ran Carthon said in this press conference to fall on deaf ears, and it sound like I'm nothing but critical of him today. A couple of just offhand things he mentioned in the press conference that I think are good. He indicated that the Titans injury issue, which has been going on for 3 years now, and when initially questioned, he pointed out that it's football. There are like 74 car crashes every single game for 3.5 months in a row. There's going to be a lot of injuries. And I think it was Paul Kuharsky who asked the question, pointed out, yes, but those car crashes happen to every team, and your team is injured in them more often than not. So what's the deal? And he relented and said the Titans injury issue is something that we have to figure out, have to spend the time to figure it out. He acknowledged that it's a really big problem. And this has been acknowledged by Titans leadership in the past. That's not to say that them acknowledging it is going to fix it, but the fact that they're recognizing it with such strong language is, I think, encouraging to fans. Another thing that he mentioned, this was a funny and random thing, it felt like, in the midst of all that was going on in the big picture here. He was asked about Peter Skoronski and not playing at left tackle this year. He said that they discussed as a team, as a front office, as a coaching staff this year, potentially moving Skoronski to left tackle, but they ultimately felt that it would be too detrimental to his development, and they were willing to consider that idea in the future. He said they're going to think about it again, which, if you know me at all, you know I like the idea of, but at this point, are you in too deep? I don't know. It's kind of weird. But the fact that this is it was really the strongest that anybody, Ran Carthon, Mike Vrabel, position coaches, anybody had ever been about the situation with Skoronski and whether they considered it or not, and just the basics of why they didn't. They didn't want him moving around position to position. He was already having to learn a new position at the guard spot. They didn't want to bump him back out, even though he played left tackle in college. It's a whole thing, but they acknowledged it, so that's good. A couple of general things about Carthon that I think he's a legit great talent evaluator, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do. Like, I really am excited to see what he's going to do with more say in the direction of this team going forward. I am Team Ran just in general. I think he's really qualified. I like what he's had to say, and I think his talent evaluation so far very minimal with the Titans, and we haven't seen a lot of that talent fully fleshed out over years of playing, but so far I've been encouraged by it. So that's a good thing. I think he's a really good guy too, who's got a human element, a human side to him in these press conferences that some diehard reporters, I think, kind of find a little bit off-putting, or like, oh, give me a break with the sob stories or the personal story. I don't know. I think the human element in pressers is really real and relatable, and it's respectable to me, right? The way that he talks about how today he mentioned how he's got to go home and he's got to answer some tough questions to his family, to his kids who were friends with Vrabel's kids, and they liked Coach Vrabel, and he had some really, really tough conversations with each different department in the team today who was under Mike Vrabel, and folks that may very well not have a job pretty soon. How he's got to explain to them that they're not going to have food on their table. It's always important to have that human element reminder of what this sport is and what this industry is. And I think he leans into that a lot. And I really do respect the heck out of that. The last thing is, I think he was put in an impossible, unenviable situation today by his owner. I think that this was really unfair, and she's done this twice now, and I don't think it's cool. I think it's really lame. I think it's really weak. He was forced to go out there. I'm not upset at all with the way that he handled himself in this press conference. Really, I'm not. Amy Adams Strunk had this sit down earlier today that I'm guessing most of you have seen, but if you haven't, on the Titans social medias, the Titans themselves, voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, and their media production team, they had a prearranged, pre-recorded sit-down interview with Amy Adams Strunk, where she answered some questions that her guys that she employed wrote and that she pre-approved. So a lot of folks giving me a hard time on social media for calling out that she needs to speak to actual media, that she should speak to actual media by saying, like, she answered all the questions. No, she didn't, guys. No, she didn't. She answered questions that were written for her. And it's not that I'm going to be mad if she doesn't speak to me personally. I don't care who she speaks to. She has made a really dramatic decision here. She, not her GM, not anybody else in the organization. She has made this decision to fire Mike Vrabel. She needs to answer some real questions about it. And instead, she sent her GM out there today. She trotted him out there to answer for her decision to fire the coach, just like previously she trotted out her head coach to answer for her decision to fire the GM. This was what Mike Vrabel had to do when they fired John Robinson, and now it's what Ran Carthon is having to do when they fired Mike Vrabel. Neither of the people that had to answer for those decisions were the people that made those decisions. Both of those decisions were Amy Adams Strunk. And you know how many times she's talked to anybody not named Mike Keith about them on the record? None. Zero. Zilch. She doesn't talk to anybody that she's not 100% confident isn't going to give her a question that she's not going to want to answer, that she's going to be uncomfortable about, that she's not seeing coming. That's not cool. It's weak. It's bad form. It really is. I don't, a lot of folks saying she doesn't owe the media anything. You're right. She doesn't owe those of us in the media a thing. You know who she does owe? She owes the thousands upon thousands of you fans of her at this moment, seemingly reeling and disjointed and potentially dysfunctional franchise. Many folks told me today they called the ticket office and permanently canceled their season tickets. They're not interested in going to this team's games anymore. They're not interested in financially supporting this team any longer. They're really worried about the team that they love, and they're invested financially and emotionally and with their time in. She owes it to those people to answer questions about these dramatic, franchise-altering decisions she's making, and she simply will not. It's weak. It's bad form. To be super clear, I do not have a massive problem at all with her taking this opportunity today to take these softball pre-approved questions that she did from the Titans themselves as a format of speaking on today's decision. Really don't. No issue with that, whatever. I do have a big problem with if she does not speak to actual media members or anybody that's going to ask her actual questions. And folks said, well, she answered all the questions you need answered. No, she didn't. Do you know how I know? Because I just a couple of hours ago sat in a room with Ran Carthon, the guy she trotted out, to answer those actual questions that she didn't answer, and he didn't know because he didn't make the decision. It's really as simple as that. There are dozens of questions she needs to answer, and instead she had her GM try to today, and he either had to say he didn't know or say that he's not going to answer that right now because he was told not to. Let's dive into all of that now. But I wanted to point that out. She needs to speak to folks. She looks like a potentially bad owner right now. And when she's not speaking to us, it's bad form. Okay. So those are the good things on Ran Carthon. That being said, we have some clips from this press conference. There were some interesting non-answers. There were some interesting obfuscations from actual answers. And there were some interesting statements that he offered up that were kind of contradictory to things he said earlier in the press conference, or contradictory to things that Amy Adams Strunk said in her statement. That's all. That's okay. Kenneth in the comments saying she talked with Teresa Walker. Yes, I had forgotten. Fair point. A prearranged meeting with Teresa Walker with the AP. She spoke to about this is a great example. She spoke with Teresa Walker about the firing of John Robinson when that happened. That was a very sterile, controlled situation. I've spoken to Teresa about this situation. I am not saying Teresa was told what to and not to ask, but I am saying it was very controlled. I believe Josh says he's coming in late. Have I been unhinged? I did just unglue myself. If she did that, even that I have some questions about. One media member, one sit down with Teresa or whoever answer. But even that would be enough to satisfy me in her attempting to reach out. Does that make sense, JT? Like, I think that would be the minimum that she could do to be fair.
I mean, I agree with you. Yeah, we're about to get into this with the Ran Carthon, but it just really seems to me that Amy Adams Strunk isn't even telling her GM right now exactly what is going on. And like you said, there's a lot of conflicting messages, and it's just a bunch of confusion for a team that I think You can go back to even like, I think from the start of firing John Robinson midweek after the Philadelphia Eagles game till now has been just a laundry list of malpractices on her end, on her part, on the Titans' part. I just personally do not think that this was the way to go about any of this. I think every decision has come at a weird time too, which makes me question, as they say they have a long-term plan. It makes me question if that is really true, since these kind of decisions come at weird times, not on the times where you usually would expect them. So yeah, it's really confusing right now, and hopefully we get more clarification once we kind of get into the head coaching search about this. But we're just gonna have to wait and see.
And Tighten Up Tony on YouTube says just kidding. Sorry. That wrong comment. Tighten Up on YouTube says, if she is not good with the media, do we want her doing pressers? Jerry Jones 2.0. Fair. Oh, and this is Ben Seaman. What's up, Ben? Here's the deal. Like, I appreciate that she's not Jerry. Jerry's crazy. Like, after every game, like that's not what I'm asking for. Really, I'm not. First of all, as the owner, like, you could let your, we're going to talk about this in a bit, you could let your GM do the hiring and firing of coaches, which is a thing that happens often, but we'll discuss that. If you're going to do these hirings and firings yourself and make these massive moves, you need to answer a couple questions just once. Just answer some actual questions that are being asked. I'm not saying you have to do even a big formal press conference. I'm not saying it has to be regular by any means. Just do a sit down with somebody to ask and answer some real questions.